Colin Farrell's long waddle to the Penguin. In The Penguin, Colin Farrell steps back into the fat suit and prosthetics of Oz Cobb, former driver, current club owner, and aspiring mob boss. The show, which draws clear inspiration from Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale's classic Batman arc The Long Halloween, takes place immediately after the events of The Batman, and follows Cobb's attempts to take over the Falcone crime family. His rivals for the throne are numerous, but none are as tricky as Sofia Falcone, Cristin Milioti, always great, better known as the Hangman, a serial killer who just returned from a stint in Arkham Asylum. The show is equally entertaining and rife with clichés, with much of the appeal stemming from its star's gonzo, go-for-broke performance. Farrell being so compelling should not surprise us. In good movies and bad, he is often the best thing on screen, but that he is this good giving a performance this bizarre is truly a welcome surprise, the wildest transformation yet from an actor prone to self-reinventions. The Penguin thinks himself the smartest man in any room. A Machiavellian genius who has hidden his true nature behind his physical deformities and a slime ball obsequiousness. His clear antecedent is Shakespeare's Richard III, who shares with Oz his physical handicaps, ambition, and flair for constant scheming. One could even imagine Oz telling someone, as Richard tells the audience, that since he does not look like a leading man, he is determined to prove a villain. But unlike Richard, whose plans mostly go off without a hitch until the very end of his eponymous tragedy, Cobb's plans always blow up in his face, forcing him to improvise to save his skin. This is when the show is at its best, when we get to watch someone who is both smarter than everyone thinks and not as smart as he believes himself to be fumble toward his future. While The Penguin is most often compared to The Sopranos, its soul belongs to the second season of Breaking Bad. Not only does the show feature a new drug with a distinctive color, but the Penguin even gets paired with a younger apprentice, Renzi Feliz's Victor Aguilar, with whom he has an ambiguously paternal relationship that may or may not be entirely manipulative. It's these ambiguities, about Cobb's intentions, his affections, his wisdom, and the way Farrell keeps us guessing about the character that brought me back to the show. Even as I found myself bored by its familiar, Christopher Nolan style take on a Batman story. The Penguin was originally conceived by Bob Kane and Bill Finger as a parody of a Gilded Age robber baron, complete with monocle, top hat, and cigarette holder. His name was not the blunt Oz Cobb, but the hilarious Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot, and he was the gentleman of crime, whose literal misdeeds underwrite the social crime of pretension. There were deep social anxieties dramatized within this. The Penguin was created in 1941, 3 years before the GI Bill helped pave the way for various immigrant outsiders, many Italian and Jewish, some of whom were involved in organized crime, to gain legitimacy in American society. Despite his faux Oxbridge name, Cobblepot is this desire, and the impossibility of this desire, made manifest. But like the Jewish parvenu Simon Rosedale in Edith Wharton's The House of Mirth, he cannot quite cross the gap and become legitimate, and is instead both ridiculous and more than a little threatening at the same time, a serious comic grotesque. All of this is stripped away from our latter-day Penguin. Instead, he is an outsider of a different sort, disabled, ugly, from a working-class home, the kind of guy whose own mother insults him for not earning enough money, the kind of guy who will never accumulate enough to fill the void where acceptance should be. This is a type we've seen many times before, but Farrell reinvents him, just as the hair and makeup crew on the show reinvent Farrell. With a voice like gargled glass, a limp, a fat suit, and extensive prosthetics, he looks and sounds like James Gandolfini ate James Cagney and then spent his recovery in the hospital watching the complete works of Robert De Niro. Farrell adopts Italian hand gestures, a thick New Jersey accent, and a whole array of large facial expressions. The transformation is so thorough that your mind cannot quite accept that this is actually Colin Farrell you're watching, in much the same way that H.P. Lovecraft's detectives cannot quite describe the horrors they discover. When a younger Cobb appears in one of the unnecessary flashbacks that are now de rigueur in prestige television, you would be forgiven for thinking at first that they had digitally face-smoothed the actor playing Cobb instead of creating a second set of masks and prosthetics for the man underneath it all. There is, however, one tragic side effect to all of this, we do not get to see Colin Farrell's real eyebrows. Which feels a bit like watching a season of basketball and not getting to see Steph Curry shoot a single three-pointer. Why, oh why, in the name of all that is holy, would you cover up Colin Farrell's eyebrows? If actors are often taught to refer to their bodies and voices as their instrument, Farrell's eyebrows are the Stradivarius in the orchestra of his art, able to take the lead at any moment, to lift from the center up, forming two inverted commas in order to express need and pain, or to cluster at the lower center of his brow in confusion at the world he confronts. They can communicate hope or pain, anger or empathy, kindness or cruelty. They can tinge his performances with irony, or make him into the most sincere man alive. They can also, and this is vital to his work, make his characters seem far, far less intelligent than Farrell clearly is. Farrell's intelligence and subtlety are the hallmarks of his art, but this wasn't always the case. By 2004, when he made Alexander, a terrible attempt at a sword and sandals epic directed by Oliver Stone, he was something of a laughingstock. Manohla Dargis dismissed his work in that film in one brutal sentence fragment. Colin Farrell, upstaged by an epically bad dye job, while Anthony Lane, noting that Alexander was supposed to be Farrell's big test as a blockbuster leading man, wrote in The New Yorker that he comes across as if he had researched the life of Van Hetchy by mistake. 2 years later, after making The New World with Terrence Malick and Miami Vice with Michael Mann, both great movies, and box office failures, he entered rehab, and a period of doubt about his chosen profession. At this point, Farrell was his generation's Icarus, a soaring wunderkind who, after a critically acclaimed performance in The Little Scene Tigerland and a supporting turn in Minority Report, got anointed Man of the Year by GQ before he'd ever anchored a hit, and then fell to earth with booze and drugs, never to be seen again. Or, as he told the New York Times more prosaically, "I was due a kick in the arse. Because I was annoying. I had so much, so quick. I was so cocksure." Soon after he emerged, newly sober, Martin McDonagh offered Farrell in Bruges. Ever since, the actor has revealed again and again just how good he can be. When we want to praise the acting of good-looking men, we tend to say that they're a character actor stuck in a leading man's body. And with Farrell, there's some truth to that. With the exception of Miami Vice, where he brings a hangdog soulfulness to Sonny Crockett, a man used to being in control of himself and his surroundings who finds himself destabilized by love at first sight with a